guys? This is Cultivate and Keep. This is Jeremy, and I'm with my boy
Corey Haynes. What up?
Corey Haynes. Well, tonight we're going to be talking about kind of going through and defining the terms cultivate and keep, and kind of explaining the definitions behind those words and kind of why we chose that as the title for what we're doing. And then we kind of wanted to go through and discuss a few main points and main topics that as we go forward with this podcast that we're gonna each week hit on and discuss of what it means to cultivate these things in our life and to keep them. So
yeah, and I think the main reason why we're doing this is like, well, let's just explain kind of what it means to cultivate and keep, since we're naming our whole thing Cultivate and Keep. But also these are just a few of the ideas. I mean, there's like literally an endless amount of different applications that cultivate and keep could be applied to, but we're just going to touch on sort of what the Lord put on our hearts and what we wanted to kind of talk about today.
Yeah.
But like the rest of this podcast and everything that we ever do is going to be on cultivate and keep.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Cool. Kick us off.
All right. So let's go through and first talk about the definitions of what these words are.
Yeah.
Corey, I believe you're up on these ones.
Yeah. So I really love, part of the reason why I kind of fell in love with the idea of cultivate and keep was the definitions. And so if we're starting with cultivate.
Did you rip it off from anywhere? Because it sounds so good, like cultivate and keep. Was it like...
Yeah, I ripped it off from the Bible.
Okay, just checking. Don't get defensive. Just checking.
No, I mean, there's nothing else out there that's cultivate and keep. We're the OGs, bro. Okay.
All right.
But so if we're looking at cultivate, kind of at a glance, at a high level, it really just means to prepare, to grow, to develop, to invest, enrich, refine, improve. So it's sort of just this idea, if you can think of like literally cultivating crops and soil, and then apply it sort of in other ways, like spiritually, financially, relationally, all these other ways. But the sort of root idea of it, of cultivating, is to grow and develop and invest in things. And so, but it's funny, like when you go to Google, in fact, if you're listening to this and you have a chance, go to Google and just type in define cultivate. And this is where I got some of these definitions, but I like that there's two definitions that come up for it. And one is the very literal one, which is prepare and use, parentheses, land for crops or gardening. So it's very like agricultural. And then you have the other side of that, the second definition, which is try to acquire or develop a quality, sentiment, or skill. And it's like quotation marks for an example. He cultivated an air of indifference. I actually don't know. I feel like that doesn't make it any more clear to me.
Yeah, that confuses me.
Yeah. So actually just scratch that. But for example, so let's go back to the very agricultural definition of prepare and use land for crops and gardening. Synonyms are to till or plow or hoe or farm or work or fertilize, right? It's to break up the soil in preparation for sowing or planting. It's to raise or grow plants. It's to, the biological one is to grow or maintain living cells or tissue of culture. But all that to say, right, this does have a very agricultural root in its definition. And then the application of that is to try to acquire, develop a quality, sentiment, or skill, right? To try to win the friendship or favor of someone. To apply oneself to improving or developing, right? One's mind or manners. Synonyms are improve, better, refine, elevate. So it's just this idea of growth, really. I mean, it's kind of what it comes down to.
Yeah, and so we're obviously, we're not going to focus too much on the, like, farming side of things.
No.
It is a cool,
well, I do have some notes on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want to hit those now, or?
No, I want to hit them later.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I do like how you compare, like, the farming side to, like, the mental, spiritual.
Because it's a good analogy.
Yeah, it is a good analogy.
Which I'll get into.
So that's cultivate. The other side of this is keep. And so keep is a little less complex than cultivate. But basically the simple definition is to have or retain possession of. And so the idea behind this is basically there are things in our lives that we can cultivate, we can pursue, we can sow into, and we can work on those. And then the idea is that we would continue that, we'd maintain that. And so that's kind of the whole idea of cultivate and keep. And so the things we talk about We're talking about how can we basically sow positive things in our life, and how can we make that a habit that we just live by on a continual daily basis.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it also sort of a less cool name that we could have done is like sow and reap, because that's sort of the same meaning
pictured
behind
like
it.
a lamb when you said that. Like
sow and reap.
Yeah, like a lamb and like a shepherd, like
Yeah,
a cartoon is what I pictured.
A cartoon. Okay, that's cool. I actually don't know where you're going with
That's
that.
not cool. Was what
Oh
I'm trying
yeah.
to
Oh,
say.
I see.
It's
I see.
like,
Yeah. Sow and reap is like it sort of sounds sort of like
it sounds
kitty.
cheesy. Yeah.
Yeah. Sort of cheesy, sort of kitty. But a similar, so cultivate and keep, or you could have like sow and reap. But basically, the idea is
Wow.
What?
That was some good rhymes.
Oh, it does rhyme,
Yeah,
huh?
that's good.
Cultivate and keep, sow and reap. Ooh.
Fire. Okay.
Maybe we'll have a rap album coming up soon.
Stop.
Actually, that's like kind of on my list of things for
All
like
right.
ideas.
If you want to get embarrassed, I will.
If anyone, listen, this is so real right now. If anyone is, I was about to say a rappist. If anyone raps and is super good lyrically, help us put together a rap song for Cultivate and Keep. Okay. That'd be so sick. Okay. Anyways, but okay. Gosh, I haven't got to my point. But the analogy of
Corey, guys.
sowing and reaping, right? You sow something, you plant it, you invest in it, and then it doesn't just like grow and like, okay, cool, I'm done with it. But then you have to sustain it. You have to keep watering. You have to protect it from all the freaking rabbits that come and try to eat it. And then there's something to harvest from it, right? Then it produces something of value back to you. So anyways, that's just sort of one of the other applications of cultivate and keep.
Yeah, I wanted to expand on keep a little bit more. So kind of reading through some of our notes, one of the definitions says to retain one's place against opposition or difficulty. I like that one. Thinking of, if we choose to make something a priority in our life, or we choose to set our focus on something, when we are opposed, when we feel challenged, are we going to continue forward? Or are we going to keep, fighting for what is right and what is good? I like that. I like that one.
Yeah. No, that's a huge one. I like that a lot. So I think that kind of gives us like a good ground base for what we're even talking about when we say cultivate and keep. But do you want to kind of get into some of the more spiritual applications and kind of what it means to us?
Yeah, so like I said at the beginning, we kind of wrote out like a few main points we wanted to hit on. I did want to say these aren't like the definitive, like only things you can cultivate in your life, but these are just a few that me and Corey agreed on. So just wanted to say that again, just to be clear. So the first one we wanted to talk about was what does it mean to spiritually cultivate in your life, and kind of what does that look like? So when I think of this topic of spiritually cultivating in my life, I kind of think of when I was like a young kid. There was a lot of things that like I really wanted and longed for. And the story that comes to my mind was when I was, I think, like maybe 7, maybe 8, Heelys were a big thing.
Oh, Heelys were fire.
And so if you don't know what those were, basically they were like shoes. Picture like those light up Skechers, like light up shoes for little kids that you stomp and they have lights. So Heelys, kind of the same idea, but instead of like lights, it was wheels. That was the cool like twist on it.
Noise.
And so basically you could just be walking and boom, pop out your little wheels, and then you just
skate around.
Yeah, you could skate around. That's the coolest thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but I really, really wanted them. And so I remember like one Christmas, me and my brother Daniel, that was like the one gift that we just really asked for and wanted. And, Christmas was...
How old were you? Like 15?
Oh, yeah, dude. A couple years ago, yeah. No. So it was like nearing the end of our like, presents. And so we kind of thought, oh man, like, we didn't get them. And so I think our last gift happened to be the Heelys. And so we opened them, and I remember just like being so happy and like running around the house, like shouting with joy, like, yeah, like whatever. And just being so happy. And that is kind of what I think about when I think of what does it mean to spiritually like cultivate. Now it might sound weird, like a weird way to think of it. And the reason why is because when I think of cultivating, spiritual things in my life, I think of simply just wanting something and yearning for it and desiring it and just having my focus set on something so badly to where when I get it, I shout for joy and I run around, and it's like all that really matters to me.
Yeah.
I also think of, so my sister Joanna, she had a daughter, and when her name's Grace, and so when Grace was young, She was probably like 2 years old, maybe 3. Anytime she was going to be going over to Mimi's house. Mimi is my mom, so her grandma, and Grace calls my grandma, my mom, Mimi. That's like her nickname. And so anytime she was going to Mimi's house, Joanna would say in the car, "Okay, Grace, we're on the way to Mimi's house." And Grace would like light up with just like laughter and smiles, and her whole like demeanor changed.
Yeah.
And it kind of got me thinking, like, what if that's how we acted when we thought about like simply just being in God's presence? And when we thought about, okay, it's time to go to church for Sunday morning, or to go to our, our weekly church, small groups, whatever it is. Like, what if we had that type of yearning and joy and laughter? And so that's kind of what I think of when I think of the idea of spiritually cultivating our life, of just wanting it.
It's sort of like the analogy, like your appetite for God. You know what I mean? And I think that's a cool analogy, because if you think about like your actual appetite and like the appetites that you have for food, your appetites are actually a byproduct of your habits and all the things that you eat, and the foods that you have to eat. You know what I mean? So like if you grew up on pizza and hamburgers and soda, your appetite is going to be for those foods, no matter what kind of, benefit they have to, or if they make you really obese and they're not good for your health. But if you grew up on, salads and fruit bowls and nutritious stuff and, grass-fed, gluten-free, whole wheat, whatever the heck it is, that's what your appetite is. But your appetite doesn't just happen and doesn't just change overnight. You have to cultivate it. And so the same thing, like this idea of spiritual cultivation, is that you have to cultivate your appetite for God. You have, like, the first time.
That's the first step.
Yeah. Like the first time Grace saw your mom, she was a tiny baby, and she probably didn't even know what your mom was. But over time, as your mom invested time and they had fun, and she bought her toys and they went out and she got to know her and she held her in her arms, then this appetite for the relationship was cultivated.
Yeah. So the first part we've talked about is basically developing like an appetite for spiritual things in our life. So first there comes the desire, first comes the appetite, and then comes cultivating, then comes the action after there's an appetite. But I do think it's important that we just we understand that, again, there has to be a desire there first. That has to start first. So once there's a desire, once there's an appetite in place.
Really quickly, well, so I'm trying to think of, like, I want more of a desire. I want more of an appetite for God. And I can think back to places in my life in the past where, like, I didn't have an appetite for God. I didn't have any sort of desire. And I can imagine that there's probably people who, like, they have an appetite for God, or I should say they have a desire to know God, but they don't have any appetite for him yet. You know what I mean? Like, they have the want to be with God, if that makes sense. Like, how do you kind of go from 0 to 1 in creating that desire and appetite for God?
That's a good question. That's one I hear that a lot, I think, from people, and I struggle with that because I don't know.
Sort of like chicken and egg.
You had a good point. You said that if you are raised and brought up eating junk food, right, then that's your appetite. And if you are raised, brought up eating healthy food, then that's your appetite. And so, like, for me, I was raised kind of just, I guess, I don't want to say in the church, but I was around people that loved the Lord. And so for me, it's like, I don't want anything else but that. Like, I don't, yes, I want a stronger appetite for God, but I don't struggle with thoughts of, like, wanting to go do my own thing and, like, go live in the world, because I've experienced God and I want to continue that. And so, but my thoughts on how to cultivate and how to increase and improve that appetite, the first thing that came to my mind was, like, surrounding myself with people that want the same thing. Yeah. I think of, like, just when I'm around, good friends that love the Lord and that we have good, mature conversations, that just influences me. I think of the music I listen to. I think of the movies that I watch. All those little things that really do play a big part. That's kind of what comes to my mind of what can I do to improve my appetite for God.
I think it sort of comes down to, like, this isn't all of it, but the first step is to change your circumstance. So, like I said, I mean, again, going back to the food analogy, if your house is filled with candy and pizza, like it's going to be impossible to cultivate an appetite for good food, for good healthy food. But if you change your environment and you change your circumstances to get rid of all the junk food and replace it with fruits and vegetables and healthy, meals, then it becomes much easier to cultivate that desire. You know what I mean? So like if you change your environment and your circumstance, whether that's your friends or like even your physical environment, then it just makes it that much easier to get started.
Here's a question for you that came to my mind just now. So when we were in high school, so you've changed a lot from who you are now to where you were when we were in high school. I remember in high school you were much more to yourself, and we'll touch on this later, I think, but you or in a later episode. But you your like aspirations for life and your goals and things that you wanted were much different than they are now.
Yeah.
And I know you're going to share of a time like when that changed, but I want to know like once you decided, okay, I want more for my life, like I want I want bigger and more stuff and like a greater vision. Like how did you actually go about changing that? Like you wanted it, but what did you do to actually make the changes? Like we could compare it in that way.
Yeah. We'll definitely cover that, I think, in the turning points episode. So go listen to that one next. Or before. I'm not sure how we're going to order these ones. I forget. But that's a good question because I did want to touch on that because I think that I have, and I recognize that. And I just wanted to say, first of all, that I don't think it's very much of me that's kind of done the work. I think the Lord has done a lot of the work inside of me and a lot of the change that's happened. But, I mean, this isn't sort of like a plug for our name or whatever, but like it was really just the idea of cultivating that desire and that relationship with the Lord and then having him change me and transform me from the inside of like, basically, like you said, so the transformation you're talking about is from when I was in high school, much more shy to myself, like lack of self-esteem or confidence, whatever it was, lack of sort of like identity or kind of like place in life and with friends, was basically sort of like a incomplete kind of version of myself. And then the Lord working on me cultivating that relationship with the Lord and all the stuff that he was doing in my life was him just bringing me to who he wanted me to be. And out of that kind of shell of a person who was emotionally checked out and who was afraid to speak and was afraid to invest in other people and was afraid to be around, was afraid to invest in friendship, basically was a lot of it. But really it was the Lord. It was me cultivating in the Lord and then the Lord returning that favor from me in changing who I was and giving me that identity.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, well, we can move on. So again, the first point is there's got to be a desire that has to be in place. And once that is there, then we take action to pursuing God. So kind of one thing that came to my mind was the in Exodus kind of chapters 19 through 24, there's a story when Moses went up the mountain. And I'm sure you've probably heard that story. You've heard those phrases, the mountaintop experience. And what's funny is when I first came across these chapters a couple of years ago. I was just like reading my Bible, doing devotions, and I came across it, and like it was a gold. It was funny because it wasn't like I went and searched for it and like was trying to find like I wasn't like writing a message and wanting to, find like the mountaintop experience or whatever. I just came across it and was like, oh wow, this is really good. And then now I realize how often like pastors like reference these chapters. And so in this story, I'll just make it real quick. Basically, this is where Moses was leading his people, the Israelites, and he needed guidance and direction from God. And so he went up on a mountain for 40 days and 40 nights and simply just sought the Lord. That's like the premise, and that's like the whole, really just the main idea of these chapters of Moses going up the mountain and worshiping and praying to God for 40 days and 40 nights, which is a long time.
Yeah. Was it me and you that was talking about this? Or I feel like I was talking about this story with someone the other day, and I was like, I don't know if I've ever realized how long 40 days and like
it
that's
was us. You asked me,
okay.
Like you had like a double take, like wait, 40? Yeah, it was 40.
Okay,
days.
it was us talking.
Yeah, I say, I like doubt myself. Am I right? Yeah, because it's such a long time.
That's such a long time.
But like that actually happened, and to think for us, like, okay, would I, right now after this leave and go for up the mountain for 40 days to
To
pray and
seek the
fast.
Lord,
It's
yeah.
like,
That's
I don't know if I
crazy.
could go do that. It's just crazy.
Right.
And these guys did that. And so,
Hmm.
so first comes the desire, then comes the action, right? Going up the mountain, pursuing the Lord. And so we're not saying like you have to go up to some rugged mountain and spend 40 days. But
Right.
what I'm saying is like in a practical, like day-to-day life, like what does it look like? What does it mean for you to go up the mountain on a daily basis? I think we need to figure out what that means, what that looks like. Is that as simple as just praying in the morning? Is that reading your Bible, a couple chapters, whatever that is? In order to cultivate the presence of God in our lives, we have to go up that mountain on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's a good point because, well, I think about myself and like I struggle to cultivate and to keep a discipline of just doing my devotions and like really kind of diving in and, you know, quote unquote going up the mountain. And it's not like I don't know the Bible or that I don't pray, because I think I do a good job of speaking to the Lord daily and being like just kind of wherever I am, just, you know, kind of communicating with him and being in his presence and stuff. But like, I think myself, like the question that comes to mind when I hear this story is, how badly do you want it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like Moses went up the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights and the Lord met with him,
Mm-hmm.
but also like, that's such a long time. And like, that's some real like dedication, you know what I mean? And it makes me think like, for anyone who's looking for some sort of like life-changing experience to, you know, like a lightning rod strikes them, you know, or some sort of life experience to kind of kick off a newfound desire for the Lord, like you have to want it really bad.
Well,
you know what I mean?
As
Like,
you're saying that, it has me thinking like there are a lot of things in history that's kind of what it's come down to. How badly do you want it?
yeah,
I believe it was Thomas Edison with the light bulb. Took him like how many tries?
yeah, it was like 10,000 or something. That's like the
couple
myth.
thousand. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think I just heard this one. It was the founder of Starbucks. What's his name?
Howard.
It's Howard something.
I can't remember.
So the founder of Starbucks, to get funding for the store, he went. I forget how many investors he went to. It was a couple hundred he went to,
right?
And he got denied and said, "No, that's not," because he shared his vision was to have a Starbucks store in every corner, whatever it was. But he went to several hundred people, and then finally, like, it worked. And now look at Starbucks. But like, the idea of wanting it so bad, and not giving up, like, you will get it. And so,
right,
yeah.
And I think, well. And again, for those people who are searching and feel like, you know, God's not meeting me, or like this isn't working, you know what I mean? Like I'm trying to cultivate my relationship with God. I'm trying to take it to the next level, but like nothing's happening. It just makes me question, like, well, one, how bad do you want it? And like, what are you putting in? You know what I mean? Like, has it been a day? Has it been 2 days? Has it been a week? Has it been 2 weeks? Like this stuff takes time and it takes perseverance, and it's not like you have to will it to happen, but like one, you need to give God the time and the place and circumstance for him to meet with you. But also like you literally just have to seek the Lord. And like, there's not going to be some sort of like magic formula that's going to work for you. It's going to be different for everyone, but you have to want it. Yeah.
So on this topic, I kind of think of like, there is like the intentional side of this. So like, okay, I'm going to have an intentional devotional time where I read and I pray and I meditate. Like there's that, and then I think of simply just cultivating the presence of God in my life. And I think of okay, I'm at work and I'm walking around, and I feel God's presence as I walk, and so that's like another side of this as well. And I think with both of those, I think what it comes down to is being intentional and just deciding this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to be consistent at it. And so I jotted down a few questions that I wanted to ask, kind of that I asked myself to kind of challenge me. And so, my title was questions to ask yourself to see if you are cultivating spiritual things in your life. And so, one of them was simple question, but how is your relationship with God? Does it exist? Is it consistent? Are you actively pursuing Him? Do you meet with God and spend time with Him daily? Another question was, do you long to know God? Like I really wanted those Heelys, like super bad, right? Like I wanted those, and I got them, which was cool. And to be honest with you, if they had like adult size Heelys, I would still rock them to this day.
Oh yeah.
But just putting that out there.
Let's see if I can make that happen.
I don't got that.
I'd
big
like
a
to see
feet,
that
dude.
Instagram.
So anyway, yeah. So do you really long to know God? Another question was, when is the last time that you went up the mountain? How close are you to God?
Yeah.
This is a good question that I actually read in a book somewhere. I don't know the author, but it was good. It says, if I could ask God himself how close you are to him, what would he say to me? When was the last time you were completely in awe of God? And then last question was, are you completely content with simply just knowing God?
Yeah. So I think this is a nice segue to one of my points. But a lot of these questions are just kind of like a self-evaluation. Like, just ask yourself really hard questions, which brings me to my point of, if we kind of go back to the agricultural definition of cultivate, one of them was to plow. And so if you can kind of stick with me here for a second, like put yourself in the mind of a farmer. Way back in the day, and this is a little hard for us to understand because probably not very many of us are farmers anymore. But back in the day, in order to sow a new field with a new kind of plant or tree or fruit or whatever it was that you wanted to grow, you couldn't just go and dig a hole and plant the seed. The soil had to be cultivated. It had to be plowed, and it had to be basically what you had to do was you had to take a piece of machinery and you had to drag it through, and you had to turn up all the rocks, all the dead roots, all the like weird other like weedy kind of stuff that was growing in there. And basically you had to turn up and you had to displace all of the bad stuff that was in the field. And in the same way, when you're asking yourself these questions, it's sort of a self-evaluation test of like, let God turn up all the ugly stuff in your life. Yeah. Let him turn up all the ugly stuff in your heart. Surface all of the doubts, surface all of the struggles, surface all the sins, surface all the addictions. Like, get it all up, plow it up, cultivate it all up. Because like you said, I mean, the first part is the desire. You have to want to cultivate your life. You have to want to have that desire for the Lord. And then maybe part two of that is that now you need to do business with the Lord. Like, now that you're up on the mountain, now is the time where you get real with God and you just lay it all out on the table. And this is true not just for new Christians. Like you said, I think like this applies to every man, every Christian of all ages and walks of life. No matter like how long you've been going to church or what your position is, or if you're a pastor, this is true for everyone. You always need to be self-evaluating and be plowing and cultivating, turning up all the ugly stuff and just giving it to the Lord and saying, all right, God, like, look, I'm turning all this up. It's all on the surface for you to see now. It's all here for you. Now I'm just going to give this up to you and let you deal with this. And so now, like, once that's all kind of dealt with, then the real kind of sowing and cultivating can begin, where now you're planting seeds, and now you're investing in things, and now you're actually putting in the work in order to grow, in order to develop as a person, as a Christian, as a man. And part of it also comes down to like you can, going back to the field and the farming analogy, you can have a field that you've cultivated and that you've grown. But if you don't keep it the same way, if you don't constantly check up on it, and if you don't constantly guard it, people are going to come through and steal your stuff. Weeds are going to grow. Rocks are going to be, somehow displaced there and are going to be found there. Mm-hmm. And I think it becomes a question of, what are you cultivating?
Yeah,
because
I was gonna ask that, yeah.
Over time, it can be like, oh yeah, you know what? Back in the day when I first became a Christian, I was on fire for the Lord, and I read the Bible every day, and I went to church, and I had these amazing experiences. But then over time, you lose that. And it's not a question of if you're cultivating, it's just a question of what you're cultivating. Yeah. And it's just a matter of, like, you can be cultivating this really kind of strong, like, desire for the Lord, but also be cultivating this sin in your life that is compromising what God's trying to do with you. And so it's important to recognize, like, you have to constantly be churning the field, constantly be churning up your heart and doing business with the Lord, and always be kind of checking it and keeping it keeping it pure.
Yeah, I think that's good. You said that it's a matter of, what are you cultivating? Because the truth is, we are all cultivating something. That reminds me of that phrase that says, "What you feed grows, and what you starve dies." Like, there's
Yeah.
something in our lives that we are feeding, that we are giving attention to. But it's a matter of, what is that, whether it's good or bad. When you ask that question, what are you cultivating? I first thought of, like, what are the good things in my life that I'm investing in.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you kind of said,
It's easy to overlook the bad
yeah,
stuff.
and then I realized, wait, there's probably a lot of bad that I'm cultivating too.
Right.
You said that was a good point, Corey.
Yeah. So there's a lot of notes. I'm stealing some of these notes from Mike from a summer camp that he did at Foothills High School Camp. Shout out to Mike Van Meter. What's up? And I've had a lot of these before. Actually, Mike's given a couple good messages on this idea before as well. But a couple of the good things. So one of the funny things that he said is he has a little garden. And sorry, Mike, for stealing your story, your little analogy, but he's like a part-time hobbyist kind of gardener. And wannabe gardener, yeah, try hard gardener. But he was talking about, like, if you're planting seeds, if you're cultivating a corn seed, like, you're not going to reap an eggplant. You know what I mean? Like, if you're cultivating a strawberry, whatever it is, like, you're not going to reap a watermelon. And some people in their lives are like, well, you know what? I'm not in the right place in my career, and I don't feel like I have a strong connection with my girlfriend and my wife. We fight all the time. I don't go to church that often. And it's like, what are you cultivating? Like, what did you expect? You know what I mean? Because, again, going back to it's not a matter of if you're cultivating, it's just a matter of what you're cultivating. Sometimes you overlook the things that you're cultivating. You don't realize that you've been, kind of harboring this resentment towards your spouse, or you don't realize that you've been neglecting church and kind of checking out. You don't realize and then over time, you're like, shoot, well, now I'm reaping this really ugly feeling in my heart and this distance from God. What went wrong? Mm-hmm. And so you have to recognize that there are things that you're cultivating. So don't be shocked when you don't like the result of them.
Yeah, that reminds me. I was talking with Mark Hoffman. He's our pastor, and I was sharing with him, like, a life update of mine of something I was going through. I said, "Hey, Mark, like, I've had victory. Like, here's the progress. Here's where I started. Here's where I'm at today. Like, woohoo, kind of thing." And I remember, like, his response was like, "Good job, but let me ask you a question." He was like, "When was the last time you were jealous, or when was the last time you envied something your friend had, or when was the last time you were disrespectful?" It was like, he just hit me with all these things, and it was kind of discouraging, but I remember kind of thinking to myself, like, okay, like, this is like the journey, like there's continuous.
The battle's never won.
Yeah, and it was good for me because, like, I remember thinking, like, I'm doing well, like, I'm making progress, and he reminded me that the Bible talks about that the Lord blesses those that walk uprightly and that walk, in good standing with Him, and that evolves, not evolves, but that connects to many areas of life, And I think we tend to identify the 4 or 5 main struggles, or the 4 or 5 main things to focus on, but there's a lot of things that we forget about.
And there's always new things that pop up, you know what I mean? And there's always, you don't think about it, like there's some sort of tragedy in life where there's someone that does something that makes you mad or rubs you the wrong way, and you constantly have to guard yourself to, quote, keep yourself from those things, and to prevent them from cultivating. On a similar note, another one of Mike's points that I loved was he said a seed must be sown to grow. And I love this because basically it's the idea that ideas don't count. And
that's good.
you may want to have a fantastic devotional life. You may want to be surrounded by the right friends. You may want to, progress in your career. But if you don't actually do something about it and start planting those seeds and start cultivating that, it's not going to happen. And it makes me think of, like, so we're kind of both entrepreneurial and business minded, but there's so many people who, like, everyone has a business idea, you know what I mean? But nothing's going to come of it. It's worthless unless they actually do something about it. Like, cool story, bro. You want to be the next Facebook, but guess what? You need to learn how to code. Yeah. You know what I mean? Cool story. You want to start a little event rentals company. cool story. Like, go buy a bunch of equipment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you have to actually do something. And it goes back to the scripture. He said, I forget what the reference was. I should know it, but it says, "Prove yourselves doers of the word and not merely hearers." And there's also something to that, I think, as well, where you can hear something over and over and over and over again, and if you don't do something about it, then it starts to lose its meaning. And this happens all the time in church, right? Where every Sunday you show up and you hear a message, and if you don't apply it to your life, over time you just start checking out, and your eyes start glazing over, and you start questioning why you go to church in the first place. And so you actually have to apply it and do something with it. Otherwise, it's just meaningless.
Yeah. One of my next points was that a harvest takes time.
Yeah.
And I love this note, but he said that bad things are harvested immediately, and good things are harvested after much time.
Dang.
And that's good on a lot of levels. He if I remember correctly, he kind of, the analogy he was using was like with an actual field. He was saying like weeds. You know, weeds,
they pop up all the time.
They don't stop. And I come from landscaping, so I know. Like, I used to get
firsthand.
Yeah, chewed out by clients all the time about weeds, and so they don't stop coming, and it's consistent. But you think of, good, when you plant a seed, when you plant a tree, it takes a long time for that puppy to grow.
Yeah.
And so I love that point. Bad things are harvested immediately, but good things are harvested after much time.
Yeah, I love this one because, and I love it so much because this was like the hardest one for me, because I just want things to happen instantly, and I want our podcast to be a million episodes.
Yeah, you're alone in that. We're not all instant like you.
That's true. I think most of us can kind of agree with that. The quote unquote microwave generation. But it reminds me of a story from Bill Wilson a couple of years ago. So Bill Wilson's a pastor. He's the founder of Metro Ministries in New York. I think they're the largest children's ministry in the world, something like that. Like, crazy number of kids every week. But he gave this message a while back. It was called "Stay a Little Longer," and it always stuck with me because he told this crazy story of he was in this like remote village in the middle of nowhere. It was probably somewhere in Africa or Asia or something like that. But he basically, like, he wasn't there to, like, I don't know. It was just him and like a very small team. So they come to this village and they're handing out medicine, I think, and he comes across this little girl, and for some reason or another, basically her guts are outside of her body, and like, without kind of getting into the detail of it, she's still alive, but all of her innards are outside of her body, which is very unhealthy, and essentially she's dying. And so they show Bill Wilson the girl, and he's like, well, what can we do? Like, is there a doctor around here? How much time do we have? And they're like, there's no doctor here. There's no time. Like, she's going to die any second. And he's like, what do you mean? Like, we can't just give up. Like, there has to be a way. And they're like, no, Bill, like, I'm sorry. Like, you can pray over her. Like, please, you can pray for healing. And he's like, no, like, I'm not giving up. And they're like, well, he's like, where's the nearest hospital? And they're like, well, it's, it's several miles west across the river, that's guarded by some militants. This is probably Africa. It sounds like Africa to me, but they're like, you would never get there in time. Like, it would take 2 hours or something crazy like that, and if they would shoot you across the bridge if you tried to cross it. And he's like, give me a truck, like, give me a Jeep, whatever it is, give me a vehicle. And so he takes this little girl, and like, she's supposedly supposed to die any second, and he drives her in the truck, and they're driving, and a long time has passed, and then they get to this river where it's very remote. There's only the river, and he's kind of at like the cross, and at the other side is an armored vehicle with a machine gun on top, and there's men in there, and they're telling him like, no, don't cross. And so he's trying to say, like, I have a girl in here, she's dying, I just need to go to the other side, we're going to the hospital. And he's like, I'm with whatever organization. And they're like, no. And he like starts to drive a little bit, and they fire a warning shot, and he just kind of comes to this point, like either I'm doing this or I'm not, you know what I mean? And like, either I'm going all in on this thing and I'm seeing it to the end, or I'm not, and I'm giving up on this girl. And so he thinks about going to the river. They would never get through the river. And so, like, I think he said that he just closed his eyes and he starts pushing the gas, and he's just like, I'm going across this bridge, God, like, tell him not to shoot, basically. And so he just gasses it and goes across the bridge, and for some reason they don't shoot, and they watch him go by. And then after another long journey, they get to the hospital, and the doctors get a hold of her, and they fix her up, and she's alive. And then he showed some picture, like, this was 5 years ago. This is where she is now.
Yeah.
Like, now she's actually like like a little girl. She's not just like a tiny little like toddler. But he's just like, stay a little longer. You know what I mean? Like, see it through to the end. Like, God has so many things for your life if you just trust him and see him through to the end instead of giving up. Because it's always hardest at the last mile. You know what I mean? It's always hardest like at the very end of things, when the hill is the steepest, or when you're the most tired, or when you're the most frustrated. But if you just stay a little longer, you'll actually reap the harvest and see the results of what you've been cultivating.
Yeah. Hosea 10:12 says, sow with a view to righteousness, reap in accordance with kindness, break up your fallow ground, for it is time to seek the Lord until he comes to rain righteousness on you.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, that's a good one. So that was kind of the whole theme of the camp. But right, the followed ground is your heart. Maybe that needs some work, right? And then you cultivate it and you bring up all the nasty stuff. And then it says, break up your fallow ground, for it is time to seek the Lord, right? To cultivate that desire until he comes to rain righteousness on you. So see it through to the end until what God is cultivating in you comes to fruition. I like that.
Okay. Next point.
You want me to roll into this one?
Yeah.
Okay. One of the other things that I thought about just in the idea of Cultivate and Keep is my man Jocko Willink. Shout out to Jocko if you're listening. Actually, I met him. I don't know if I told you, I met him at Hypergrowth.
Yes, you told us. You're a little fanboy.
Yeah. I still haven't posted the pictures. I need to post the pictures on social media. Jocko's really cool. So Jocko Willink, quick backstory. I don't know what the right terminology is. Retired Navy SEAL. He's not an ex-Navy SEAL. Retired Navy SEAL. Led one of the teams in Iraq, I want to say, like during kind of when it was the worst. And he led a team in Ramadi, which was like basically the deadliest city in the world at its time. And then now he started like a multi-million-dollar consulting company, and he speaks all over the world and has a book and a podcast and all sorts of cool stuff. Anyways, he has this theme of what he calls discipline equals freedom. And so it's just this idea of, when we're thinking about cultivating and keeping, if you want more free time, like think about the kind of the end result, like what is the thing that you want to reap? If you want more free time, if you want more financial freedom, if you want more career progression or creative freedom, so to speak, whatever it is that you want, you need more discipline. And they seem kind of diametrically opposed. Like you can only have one or the other. You can only have more free time or really strict time, or no money or lots of money, or you know what I mean? But they think it seems like discipline and freedom are on opposite ends of the spectrum, but in reality, they work together. And so it's just this idea of, for example, if you want more free time, what you actually need is more discipline in your time management. And then that allows you to have more free time. Yeah. Right. So slay your dragons in the morning. If you really want more free time in the morning, get up earlier. You know what I mean? Stick to a schedule. Get the things done that you want to get done. Have a plan. You know what I mean? If you want more financial freedom, have more discipline for your money. Have more discipline for your budget and for your investing strategy, for the way that you handle it, for the way that you spend it. Have more discipline for the way that you earn it as well. Take up another side job. Have discipline in the way that you're investing in your career. If you want more, if you want to cultivate, a better marriage, for example, what you really need is more discipline for your marriage. And that sounds funny, but it's discipline to spend the right time with each other, to love each other, to the discipline to not say what you want to say at the right moments, right?
That's good.
But I love this idea because discipline is like the plow, right? In the kind of, again, going back to the field and the farmer analogy, discipline is like the plow, and that it makes you face your bad habits and all the ugly stuff that's in the soil head on, and you just have to surface it.
Stir it up, yeah.
Just stir it up, deal with it, and in facing it, it actually gives you freedom. Now it gives you the freedom to sow into that soil instead of letting those ugly, nasty things kind of rule over it. So that's just a side point.
And that's good. It's really good.
Yeah. I love Jocko.
Yeah.
I love Discipline Equals Freedom.
This is Jocko Podcast.
This is the Jocko Podcast. I love it.
All right. Am I up?
You're up.
Tag me in.
Put me in, coach.
Okay. Hold on. I'm a little sick. Sorry, guys. Need some water.
It's good stuff.
Okay. Let's see here. All right. Sorry for the delay. Next point was cultivating relationships. So this is one that I like a lot. And I think about community, I think about my circle of friends. And this is one I think about, you kind of hear that analogy, like, build your fortress before the attack comes, right? Or, you know, build like your safe house before the storm, or whatever. And so think of like friendships and just people in my life. Like we need to, have those in place before times get rocky or times get hard, but in order to do that, I think we got to realize people matter and people are important. And I think it's easy to forget that. I would say about 7 or 8 months ago, I don't remember why, but I went through this like month or two where I just had like a whole shift in my mindset of like, wow, like people matter. And for me, it's easy to get for my week when I think about all the things to get done. So I'm someone that naturally, like I'll have a schedule and I follow it, right? So I'll do my to-do list, I'll do my stuff, and I'll like neglect people or friendships to get my stuff done. And so I'm like on the way far end of discipline to where it's like not good. I have to like pull back the other way, other direction. And so
where sometimes you forget to put the right things in the schedule.
And so I was like convicted in this time of like, wow, like I kind of suck in this way. Like, I used to like pride myself in my ability to get things done. And I just like realized like, wow, like I'm getting things done, but I am like forgetting like the good and like important parts of my life and like the people that really truly matter. And so it kind of got me thinking about this idea of just like friendship and just people and like small things like getting coffee with someone you don't really know just to kind of get to know them, or just fostering, new friendships and simply like making people a priority. Like I was convicted to do that. And so I kind of started doing that. And so like now, like I'll get coffee or grab lunch with like random people. Actually, what's today? Thursday. So on yesterday on Wednesday, I grabbed lunch with a friend that I haven't seen in like 6 months. Right. So I'll do like random like lunch dates and kind of just like talk to people. And I've been convicted that is important. And so there's like the side of it of like, it's important to just simply like love on people that you don't really know, but also like your close circle, like invest in those friendships, invest in those people that and simply make time for them. There's a pastor from Seattle. His name is Judah Smith, and he does I think it's a 6 or 5 part message series on, the title is Being a Friend of Jesus. And it's such a good topic. And he goes through 1st through 3rd John. And if you haven't read those books, you should. They're pretty short in the Bible. But they mainly focus on the idea of like love, and they're pretty simple. But the whole idea is simply being a friend of God and knowing Him like a friend. And that's kind of like the whole idea that it focuses around. And he has this line that he says, you only know God to the level that you love like God. And he says, this is not a test of faith, but it's a test of genuine friendship.
Dang.
And I think, about 7-8 months ago, I think that was when I listened to this series of podcasts, and that was when I was like super convicted. And so like since then, I've tried to make it a habit of investing in friendships, and it's good, and it's biblical. Galatians 6:2 says, bear one another's burdens so to fulfill the law of Christ. And so, yeah, I mean, if I could sum it up in like a sentence and a challenge, I would say, who is someone in your life that right now that might be going through a hard time that needs a friend? Simply just be available for them.
Yeah. Well, I like that too, because when we say simply be available, sometimes like I think that's an easy kind of cop out. Like, well, I'm available if someone asks me to go get lunch. But sometimes being available is to recognize someone is in need and then to make yourself available. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, exactly. I'm going to go out of my way and I'm going to reach out to them and first. Yeah. I like that too, because They're doing the series right now, but Neil just did the first one on community.
Oh yeah, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I know. God, that's funny timing, huh? But he just, I love, like, the one line that I remember from that the most was, he said, I want to make sure I get it right. He says, you have to build your community before you need it, basically, is what he was talking about.
Opened up with,
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's huge because, again, you don't realize how much people matter until you don't have them. And then that really stinks because then you have to, like, re-cultivate those relationships, and you have to go back and fix whatever it is, or you have to. But if it's just something that you're always cultivating, and then and you're building your community of friends and pastors and people in your life, then, like, you need that. You know what I mean? And I love also that he said, God always talked about us as a people, not as a person. And kind of the cliche verse, Jeremiah 29:11, where he talks about, for I know the plans and I have a hope and a future for you, whatever. But right before that, he's talking about the people of Israel. It's not just about you. And I think it can be really easy. Like, basically, you can't do this alone. You need that community of people, and you have to cultivate those relationships in order to build it.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. You want to just jump to the next one?
Yeah, I'm just looking through my notes. Okay. All right. So our next point was, let's see here, cultivating wealth and security for your family. I feel like I'm surrounded by, like, a lot of people that when we talk about wealth and the future and security, it's almost looked at as like a bad thing. And what I mean by that is it's okay and it can be good if you are someone that you desire to make a lot of money and you want to be secure in your future and you want to be secure with your finances. And that kind of, like, that switch flipped for me a couple years ago. I've realized for myself, I am motivated by money, and I thought that was bad. Like, for the longest time, I'm like a bad person. Like, I can't tell anyone this. And I was talking to my dad about it, and he was asking me, like, well, what do you want, like, in your future? What do you want in a career? Like, what motivates you? And I was like, honestly, like, money does. And he was like, good, me too. And I was like, wait, what? And he was like, yeah. He was like, it's okay to be motivated by money as long as that isn't the sole thing that drives you, and you don't love the money. Because the Bible doesn't say money is bad. The love for money is bad. And so I wanted to hit on this point because I think that, like, I look at my community of friends, and thankfully, like, I think I'm blessed with a lot of good friends that have their head on straight. But I know I'm around a lot of people that don't have this kind of in line, I would say, in the correct way. I think that often...
In what sort of ways?
I think in the church, a lot of young men look at simply, like, the head priority has to be, like, serve in ministry, then your family, then make money and provide. And I feel like it kind of goes in that order, and I feel like that's out of order. I think it's your family, and then but with that is providing security for your family, and then it comes the ministry, and then it comes in those things. Yeah. So the family has to be the highest importance, and if, between you and your wife or your family, if you set certain, like, financial goals or things that you want to accomplish, like, you need to fulfill and do those things. And so I think it's important to just recognize that these things aren't bad. It's good to, if you have a desire to be secure, like, that's okay. I think it's important just to kind of put that out there,
Yeah, I like that verse that actually, do you want to just read those? Because those are really good.
You proud of me?
Yeah. I was like, dang, those are fire.
Thanks, bro. 1 Timothy 5:8 says, but if anyone does not provide for his relatives, especially for members of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Genesis 2:5 says, the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and to keep it. Proverbs 10:4 says, the Lord took the man and put him in... Just saw that. That's weird. Sorry. There's an issue. Technical difficulties.
To work. To cultivate it and keep it.
Well, I would look this up real fast, but...
It's a different translation.
Anyway, I'll just continue my next point. Sorry, I accidentally copied the wrong verse on the same reference.
Oh, I
You
see.
see
It
what I
says
did?
Proverbs
Yeah.
10:4,
My
but the
bad.
reference is Genesis 2:15, which is our kind of cornerstone
My
verse.
next point I was going to get on, basically that working is good. That was kind of what I was going to talk about. So
Oh, yeah.
I started with like saying, wealth and finances and security. If those are things you desire, then like, first of all, it's good to want those things. I think that for me, for a long time, I thought that it was bad that I wanted that. So I just wanted to say, first off, like that's okay. But secondly, if you want those things, well, then comes the work. And we have to be willing to work and to pursue those things that we want. I think that what was I gonna say? Sorry, I lost my train of thought here.
The verse.
Did you look it up?
Yeah.
Okay, I saw you
Proverbs
doing that.
10:4. It says, "Lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth."
Man, that is such a good segue, and we just screwed that whole thing up.
That's okay.
Maybe we can edit all that.
Nope. No
Corey
editing.
doesn't want to edit, so
Zero editing.
do me a favor, read that again so I can hear it.
Yeah. Proverbs 10:4. Lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth.
Yeah, I love that. So, my growing up, my dad was like a workhorse. I mean, he just worked like really hard, and so I think because of that, that's naturally like in my family. Like I saw the way my dad worked, and like I want to work, and so that's how I am now. Like I don't have, I'm not scared to work, and I want to work,
Yeah.
and I realize like most people aren't that way, and it's not. I don't want to say that's not bad, because I kind of do think that it's a little bad actually. If you are a man and if you aren't prepared and don't want to work, like there's an issue. Like I think that it's important that
Well, God designed us to work.
designed us to work, and that was one of the verses we read. One of the notes I put in here was, before wealth comes, before security comes, and before family comes, I think work needs to come before those things. We have to prepare for the family, prepare for the wealth, prepare for security. You have to build that and cultivate that. It doesn't just come. You have to work for that, and you have to build that in your life.
Yeah. I think a key distinction there is that I think a lot of people are afraid to cultivate wealth, if you will. Like they're afraid, like you said, like getting quote unquote rich is a bad thing. But also like they don't want to hoard their money, and they don't want to like use their money in bad ways. You know what I mean? But I think the important distinction there is that, like the verse says, lazy hands make for poverty, diligent hands bring wealth. Your definition for wealth is dependent on you. And basically what wealth means is that you're independent from money. So if you're independent from money, there's no need to love it. But if you're dependent on money, really you're living in poverty, because if you're dependent on money, like that is your love, that is your goal, that is the thing that you have to strive for, just for even for survival.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I think like you said, so wealth and cultivating wealth and financial gain isn't a bad thing, as long as it's independence from money.
I agree.
Right? If you're building more and more wealth just for the sake of building wealth and riches so that you can hoard it and because you love it and you want to possess it, that's not a dependence for money. That's actually a dependence on money. You need money to feel good about yourself, to feel fulfilled, to feel motivated. But if you're independent from money, then you have wealth.
Yeah, I think another thing for me that I've been realizing, we were talking before we started recording that, so for me, there's been a lot of change in my life. A lot of things are just progressing. And so with that, I've had to make a lot of purchases and just, I'm spending a lot of money that I've worked for and saved for. And at first it was hard for me to let these things go and to do what I need to do to, move on with my life. And I was kind of realizing like, no, like I don't work and I don't do all these things to like hoard up my money. I do it so that I can live and I can, simply live a life, but also while I live, like to bless and to help others. And so for me, like that, the thought process of, okay, I desire wealth, I desire security, I desire that my family is comfortable, right? All these things. So with that, like I do want to build wealth to allow those things, but at the same time, it's not about building the wealth. Like that's not where my security comes from. So it's being okay with building wealth and then seeing it go, right? And seeing it go to work for the things that you want, whether it's security or stuff like that. And so,
yeah. And if you're thinking about it, if you're living impoverished, you have no ability to give or to be generous or to help someone. But if you're living with wealth, you have a lot of ability to give and to be generous and to help others and to provide. So it's a good thing, I think, is what we're getting at right here is to cultivate wealth and then to keep it in a way that you're not letting it grab hold of your heart and you're not letting it be your sole kind of purpose and meaning in life, but you're actually letting it work for the kingdom and for the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
One of the points that I wanted to hit was just about mental kind of cultivation, so that we're sort of leaning a little bit away from sort of the spiritual application, but this is still spiritual. But one of the questions I wanted to ask was, you gotta pee?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll probably wrap up here pretty soon. You can hold it. You can be a big boy. But one of the questions I wanted to ask was, are you cultivating godly thoughts or ungodly thoughts? And one of the verses that comes to mind, I don't have it in front of me, but it's Paul speaking to one of the churches, and he says, whatever is good, whatever is noble, whatever is praiseworthy, think of these things. And I think to some degree or another, like I'm not sure what degree it is, but there's a lot of blessing in having godly thoughts and even just positive thoughts.
Well, yeah, I like this topic a lot.
Yeah, because kind of, again, I don't know the degree that it happens, but there's some sort of correlation or causation with the things that you think and then what you become and what you do. And so if I think, God can't use me, I'm worthless, I don't have any money, I'm never going to be able to do X, Y, and Z, you just living naturally will live out those thoughts.
It's like you're building a recipe for like a negative outcome, kind of.
Exactly.
That's how it goes.
Yeah. And so, yeah, exactly. So if you're cultivating negative thoughts, how can you expect a positive result? And going back to the cultivating thing, it's not a matter of if you're cultivating, it's a matter of what you're cultivating. So if you're cultivating these bad and negative thoughts, these sinful indulgences, if you're cultivating just overall negativity, skepticism, if you're cultivating kind of bitterness or harboring resentments towards someone, all those things are worth something, and you're cultivating something whether you know it or not. So cultivate good thoughts, godly thoughts.
Yeah, I think of we all know those people that when they are put in like a hard situation or a rough day, like their day just falls apart, right? Or if they're they have a plan and something happens and it changes, like, oh no, like the worst has happened, and it just crumbles. And so like I think of that, and my mindset is, okay, you're in a bad situation, you are where you are, there's nothing you can do to fix that. So we can be positive and we can just speak life into it, or we can be negative. And so my take on it is, this might suck, like this might end really bad, but let's hope it's going to be good, and let's speak life, and let's be positive, and let's cultivate good thoughts into it, and then do the best we can and hope for a good outcome.
Yeah, I think God is an optimist for sure. If you think about God as a pessimist, like optimism versus pessimism is just about the outcome. It's not about your circumstance. So it doesn't matter what your circumstance is. You can either have an optimistic viewpoint of, God can work all things for his good. Any sort of positive thought about this, I can learn from this, I can grow from this, this will challenge me, God used this in some sort of positive way. Or that same situation, that same circumstance can be, God, what's happening? Why are things falling apart? This isn't for me. I don't want to do this anymore. This is too hard. I don't like this. I give up. And ultimately, again, your thoughts, you become who you think that you are. And if you cultivate God's desire for you and the thoughts that he has for you, you'll become who God wants you to be. But if you're cultivating who the devil wants you to be and all these negative thoughts, you will become that person as well.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And then overall, so, I think we've pretty much hit on a lot of these. The one other thing that I wanted to touch on was just about keeping. And I wanted to touch on sort of my life verse. It's been my favorite verse I discovered like the month after I got saved. But it's Acts 20:24. No one steal it. It's mine.
That's his password to a lot of his stuff.
So hey, oh, that's like a legit secure. Oh, I'm going to have to go change it.
That actually is like legit.
Dang it.
Hold on. They don't know if you have like colons or asterisks or
Don't give them clues.
I'm just joking.
Just
it's not
kidding.
true. His face right now, he's like actually upset. That's
a little
funny.
bit. Well, now I have to go change things.
So glad
I have to add like 3 more characters. Now it's going to be like
that's funny.
Acts 2024 asterisk exclamation point Z. I don't want to have those extra stuff.
Corey, no one's gonna even listen to this one, so it's fine. Okay,
Yeah, right. Millions of people are going to listen to this.
That's true.
Okay, but okay. So Acts 20:24, wow, says, "But I do not consider my life of any account as dear to myself, so that I may finish my course in the ministry which I received from the Lord Jesus, to testify solemnly of the gospel of the grace of God." So sort of a mouthful. I wish it was a little more concise. And there are a couple different versions that switch out some words. But overall, I love this because he says, so that I may finish the course and the ministry which I have received. And like we touched on it earlier, but like you were talking about, sort of the battle is never won. Like it's a constant struggle. Just on the thought of keeping, you have to fight for everything that the Lord is cultivating in your life. You have to protect with all that you have, all of your thoughts, all of your habits, everything. You have to literally fight to keep everything that the Lord has blessed you with, everything that God's doing with you, all that you are today. And life in a grand sort of perspective is very short compared to all the thousands of years and then all the millions of years that are going to be in eternity. But right now it feels really long.
Yeah.
And so you have to stay the course. You have to persevere. You have to push forward. You have to keep going. And I love that definition of, or that sort of application of keep, because it's just an encouragement to persevere and to sustain yourself and all that God is doing with you. It takes time.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. I think that's a lot of good
Any
stuff.
other thoughts or
A lot of golden nuggets. I have to go change my password now. So
I'm so glad I said that. Like, I don't know. I'm just happy with myself.
really, I'm really disappointed. Actually,
It was funny. It just came out. I didn't think about it.
You know what you're cultivating right now?
A friendship.
A security breach.
A security breach. Oh, Corey's a dork.
Oh, Jeremy. All right. Well, I think that does it for this episode of Cultivate and
Okay,
Keep.
family.
Thanks for listening. Follow us on Instagram.
Yes.
We're going all in on Instagram. So you can find us, me and Jeremy, and then you can find Cultivate and Keep on Instagram. Look us up. You can follow us there and subscribe. Give us some 6-star rating. You know what I mean? We want that.
You can email us.
You can. You can email us. Tell them.
You got this or me?
No, you got it.
Okay, so it's
You tell it better.
You can email us at cultivateandkeep.com.
We can talk. We can have a conversation. We can
Yep.
cultivate some fellowship right there.
So the email is us at cultivateandkeep.com.
Yes. And follow us on Instagram. Find us on
boom,
Patreon
boom,
as
boom,
well. If you want to be a supporter, we have some
boom.
extra episodes. Otherwise,
boom, boom,
no,
boom,
the outro
boom,
music is
boom.
going to be queuing like right now. I can't start it until after you stop. And now.
Bye.
Boom.